Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Everquest Old School. And on this episode, I'm going to be playing my Cleric, level 9 High Elf. And we're over next to the tents in Crushbone. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this area, you'll get a fair amount of Legos as well as a decent amount of Centurions as well. And as you see, we're about to get a level 10 Druid over here, so our group's going pretty well. In fact, I'm going to buff up right now. Although I think that's what she's doing. Because we do have another Cleric here. Go ahead and cast, see if it actually takes. Nah, she's already buffed these guys up. So I'll just go ahead and do my direct damage spells. Now, they're not very efficient when it comes to power, but with two healers, especially since she's doing a really good job healing, and I haven't really had to do anything since I joined, there's no real reason why I shouldn't use it, my direct damage. Now, usually in this situation, as long as both healers have around about the same amount of power and have the same heal spells available to them, because sometimes you'll have to wait 8, 9, 10 levels before you get a new heal spell. So as long as the clerics are within that range and they have the same heal spell, you usually will want to have the healer with the most, or the highest level, and do the attack, simply because he won't get resisted as much. But our healer is out of power, so I'm going to go ahead and heal him up. If I had known that, I wouldn't have wasted any, but she had been doing so well. Let's go ahead and heal up. Let's go a little further down. I'll tell him I'm at 50%, which is close to what I'm at. I'm actually only at 46%, so not too far off from the truth. I try not to overestimate. I try to actually lowball them. So if I'm at 45, I'll tell them 40, just to give myself a little bit of buffer zone when they do pull more than I'm expecting or more than I would want them to pull. But lately, I've actually been giving them a high number compared to what I'm having, simply because I don't want to be the reason that slows the group down too terribly too much at this stage, because you really don't have to be as careful right now as you would be later on in the game. It does help because it trains you to be that way, and later on, if you've gotten into the habit of pulling too quickly, you may fall back into that kind of pattern without realizing it, and then of course wipe the whole group. So you kind of want to teach yourself the good habits right now, but at the same time you do want to level a little quicker, because you can. I mean, at later levels you're leveling that slowly because that's the only option to you. So sometimes down here at this level 1 through probably about level 15, you can kind of push the envelope a little bit more than you should. Around level 15, you start getting into a little bit more difficult zones like unrest and things of that sort, where you really have to either be equipped, know what you're doing, or just have a really good group overall, so that a couple people are leaving. Who's... I don't think she's the healer. No, she's the tank. So I guess Theo is going to be the one, or Tio is going to be the one who's going to pull from now on. I got to make sure I keep up with what's going on. A lot of the times I get caught up talking to you guys and just, explaining a few things here and there. I hope it doesn't sound like preaching, because I am far from an expert on this game. There's a lot about this game that I do not know. And you're constantly learning. I mean, even if you've been playing it since the day it came out, you will still be learning things. Most of the time, relearning them, because you just, that old saying that guy's forgotten more about a subject than you will ever know. It's completely true. The more you try to cram in, the more you actually forget. And that's why some of the greatest scientific discoveries are simply because somebody went back over their old notes and realized that they had made, a pretty good observation, but didn't have the knowledge they have now, if that makes any sense to you guys. Add a mana again, pull at your own risk. I am full mana. Just to let him know. And I was too close. I know I should have moved. but not a big deal. Didn't really hurt me that much, which is a surprise because it is a Legionnaire, and I do believe it's red. Yeah, it's a red con. And I think Nina is a ranger, but don't hold me to that. She may just be a druid. I'd have to double check to be safe. In fact, let me do that real quick. She is anonymous, so there's no way for me to tell other than looking at her character, and she looks like a wood elf. So chances are either a druid or a ranger, because those are the common races or common classes people pick for that race. And then looking at her weapons, a shield and a sword. I don't know. I mean, that's really, because I've seen druids with shields on, but later on in the game they usually don't have one. I don't know. I don't know on that one. I'm guessing a ranger probably. But we'll just have to wait and see. Now, I could easily just ask, and I'm sure she'll say, but I never really found a reason to use the anonymous tool, which is just /ANON, which will allow you to, as I'll show you up here on her. Actually, I'll just do it again. Do a who all for the zone, which is just /. You don't even have to do a who all, just /. We'll show it to you. And anybody who's anonymous, like Genki right here, it just tells you his name. It doesn't tell you what race he is, what level he is, if he's in an alliance, you know, or anything of that sort. So I guess if you're trying to hide out from people and you don't want your friends to know what zone you're in, or if you got a stalker, I guess, and you don't want them to know where you're at, they know you're on. You can block them from sending you messages. And it's very easy in this game to hide from somebody if you really, really want to. It's almost impossible to find somebody if they really don't want to be found. So I guess the anonymous thing is kind of useful in that respect, but it seems to be more of a hindrance to me than anything else, because again, when you're in a group, people can't find out who you are unless you do a class check or something along those lines. And then people who are looking for certain classes to fill out their group can't find you because they don't know what you are, you know, unless they know you personally. They can't be like, oh, you're a cleric, I'll go ahead and invite you because you're around our level, you know, and you're the perfect class that we need. So you're going to miss out on those kind of opportunities. And you may be like, I don't like pickup groups, but occasionally, not too often, you know, but I think while I was playing before and I got all the way up to max level, about a handful of times I would get a message out of the blue. And this may only happen to certain classes like clerics and enchanters or things of that sort, but I would get a message out of the blue saying, hey, our guild is putting a raid together to go to the plane of hate or to the plane of fear, and we need one more cleric, or we need one more person. Do you want to join? I don't know them at all. They don't know me at all, but they sent me a tell because they saw that 1, I was the right level, 2, I was on, and probably 3, that I was the right class that they wanted. Now, how often that happens to everybody else, I don't know. You guys would have to let me know if that's ever happened to you before, or if that's a rarity, or if you saw your alliance, your guild, doing that often. Maybe you guys are really heavy. I know there are certain guilds that were really heavy on tanks. Like that's, you know, they didn't go out looking for tanks. It was just a coincidence that, you know, everybody they seemed to get would be a paladin, a shadow knight, a warrior, you know, something like that, and they just had like 1 or maybe 2 clerics or healers in general in their entire alliance. So even if all their healers showed up, they still wouldn't have enough for 4 groups. So in those situations, I understand why they would look elsewhere for, you know, a couple pickup clerics or druids or shamans or whatever else they need. But for the most part, most alliances try to go out of their way to make their guild, you know, more even-handed, more all around, so that they have a good mix. Because, you know, I talk big about clerics because, you know, obviously that's who I play, that's who I like. But other classes have some really, really good stuff. Plus, the problem with having, you know, 4 clerics in a raid is, well, their heal spells don't have this problem, but like their buffs will. You can't stack a healer or cleric buffs on people. So if we have one cleric, he can buff everybody in the raid. Granted, it's going to take, all his power several times over to do that, but he could buff everybody in the raid, and that's it. He wouldn't be able to give anything else. Whereas if you have a cleric in one group, a shaman in another, a druid in another, a lot of their buffs do stack. So you could see how you could take almost the same healing, and then throw on all these extra buffs, which really make a huge impact. And the cool thing I liked about druids is that they have the chloroplast, which is a regen. And that's something clerics don't ever get, or at least they didn't when I was playing. So you would have, the ability to regen. Like this guy right here, he's at 96%, 92%. If I was going to try to heal him, I'd have to waste a little bit of power, and it wouldn't really be mana efficient to do so, especially at later levels with complete heal and such. But with chloroplast, that actually would save you quite a bit of power, because in some of these fights, they do area effects, and the area effects really don't hurt that much, and they don't happen that often, but over time they slowly whittle down the group's health to the point where you have to heal everybody at least once with a complete heal or a supreme heal or whatever it may be, and therefore wasting a little bit of your power. And in a raid, you just never know when a really bad pull is going to come, and that you always want to stick at full power as much as you possibly can, so that when that bad fight comes, you're as prepared as possible for it, because it will eventually come. Every raid I ever went on eventually had something that was unplanned, or just happened at the wrong time, or somebody did something that they weren't supposed to do. It's kind of like NASA used to say, or still says, it's not a mission until they get that one thing that goes wrong. Because it's not a question of when, or, what's going to happen. It's just when is it going to happen. And then they feel better once it happens and it's something small. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. I like her little text down here. Oh, there's another cleric. Man, there's a lot of clerics looking for groups tonight. But you guys will have to let me know what your opinion is on raids, makeup, whether you like, just all healers as far as clerics go, or do you like a mix of shamans, druids, even paladins can, like I said, in a pinch, do a little bit of healing. Now, they are not made for it, and if it's going to be heavy healing, they're not going to be able to keep up. But it is nice to have them in the mix just in case. Not to mention they do have that lay of hands, so in the right situation with the paladin who's paying attention, you can do some pretty amazing pulls and still make it back, because that lay of hands, as far as I've seen, really doesn't pull that much aggro to the paladin. And even if it does, where else do you want it? A paladin is a tank, so if he pulls all the aggro on himself, so much the better, because that's the guy you want, rather than the cleric or the druid or the shaman or any of the other people who have heals. So, although I can't think of anybody else who has heals other than those guys. I don't think rangers do. I don't think rangers have heals. Yeah, I think it's just those three classes plus the paladin, if you want to count that as a healing class. But for the most part, I don't. Anyone use leather whip? No, I'm not going to use that. Only paladins, rangers, shadow knight, bards, rogues, and warriors. In fact, I gave that to someone the other day because they didn't have one. They had lost all their weapons. Let me buff myself up real quick. I wanted to pose a question to you guys. I was watching some YouTube videos the other night, and the topic of deja vu came up. That's the process of feeling like you've seen or been through something before that's exactly the same or close to it. And they were talking about how people will normally feel that sensation as they're going through something. And I was thinking about it myself, and I was like, I've never had it where I'm in the situation and I get the feeling of deja vu the way I get it. And maybe I'm abnormal in that sense, but I always get deja vu before it happens. Like I can picture it and feel it in my mind of the things that are about to happen. And then for the most part, that's exactly how they happen. lately, though, when I get that feeling, I always do something to change it. Don't know why. I want to see if it's possible. Maybe, if I am possibly, predicting the future or whatever the case is, your neurons firing in the wrong order, whatever the case is on that, I always want to see if I can change the outcome of that. So whenever I get that feeling of deja vu, I'll do something that my mind is telling me that I didn't do the first time. And the last time I did it, I was actually sitting in the living room with my sister-in-law and my brother. We were watching TV, and their daughter was running around playing with the Legos, and I had the same sensation, like the exact thing we were watching on TV was about to do something, and then she was going to knock all of her Legos down and start crying because it hit her on the head. So I went over and I moved the Legos from behind her so that they wouldn't fall on her head. And just a few moments later, she got up, and if she had gotten up in that way, the Legos would have fallen and probably would have landed on her head. So it does seem like, I'm not saying I'm psychic, because I am completely and totally not. I don't really buy into that kind of stuff, but I'm just wondering y'all's point of view on deja vu. Does it happen the same for you guys? Do you see it coming ahead of time, get that feeling ahead of time, and kind of get the idea of what's gonna happen, or do you only get it while you're in that situation, or do you get it after the fact, after you've gone through the motions and be like, I thought I did that before? So I don't know. It's just kind of weird how it seems like people experience that one phenomenon or effect, whatever you want to call it, in different ways. And then some of you guys may have no clue what we're talking about. Maybe some of you have never had deja vu, which is kind of weird because I've never met anybody who hasn't. So if you're one of those people, I would love to hear your comments on that. It's kind of a weird topic for Everquest, but it was something I was thinking about that I wanted to ask you guys, and just get your opinion. Find out if you guys are like me, or are we all completely different from each other in that respect. And it's probably nothing to it. It's probably just neurons firing in the wrong order or something like they say, but you just never know. Crud, I completely forgot to update a client site with some info before I logged on to play. It won't take me but 10 minutes. Okay. So I've done that before. You log on and then you remember that you need to go do something. That still went off. I guess I should start using my direct damage spell again. I was trying to give her a little time to rest because she was doing buffs and healing at the same time, and she was going out of mana like every other second. But it seems like she's okay to heal now, so I'm just going to use my direct damage spells. Very weird for a cleric to do that. I think I've done that a handful of times in all my groups. It doesn't come up too often. And the spells really don't hit that hard, and they use quite a bit of power to boot. So not very efficient, especially if you're going to compare yourself to any other class, like a cleric, or not a cleric, a wizard or a necro, even a druid. A druid will far out damage you and use less power to do it than a cleric ever could. So I don't know. I mean, there's always those people out there who are very adamant that they're a warrior, cleric, and stuff. And I never really quite understood that point of view because, as I said many times before, if you're going to be a cleric, be a cleric. If you want to be a warrior, be a warrior. If you want to be a warrior cleric, play a paladin. I mean, that's exactly why that class was invented. So you could be half warrior, half cleric. Not really the best of either world, but it actually seems to be tailored more towards the warrior. Like it's almost like 65 or 70% warrior with that 30-35% healer thrown in every so often, because you get some halfway decent buffs. You get pretty good tanking. I mean, they're not the greatest tanks in the world. The warrior, in my opinion, would probably be one of the best tanks, and the Shadow Knights would be the best pullers. Shadow Knights really can't tank all that well either. They're okay, but they're not anywhere close to a warrior. It's just, the classes are made for that specific thing. Obviously, a warrior doesn't get any other benefits. He doesn't get the death touch. He doesn't get fatigue death. He doesn't get that life siphon spell that the Necros get. He doesn't get any of the heal spells that the Paladin gets. So they give him that much more for the tanking. Now taunt-wise, I haven't really seen any class really outweigh the other when it comes to taunt. I mean, really, in this game, the one thing that can decide whether you're going to get aggro or not is damage, you know? And so, like I said before, Necros will be able to outdamage pretty much anybody, but they do it over time. So they don't get a whole lot of aggro if they're doing it right. Whereas a wizard, most of his spells do damage up front. You know, you cast the spell, he gets hit with whatever amount of damage done. There's no, dot accompanying that spell. And so he usually, or as I've seen, if he wants to every single time, he'll be able to still aggro. I mean, there's no stopping that. I don't care if you got 3 tanks sitting there, spamming the taunt button. If that wizard truly desires to have aggro, he only needs to do like 3-4 spells and he got it. That's it. You're done, at least for a few seconds, and that's if you have some really. I didn't even get to cast a ton of spell on that one. Fizzling on this one. Let's see how much damage it does. So it did 18 points of non-melee damage. Yeah, so about 18 points apiece. Let's see, what's my power at? 83. So it went from 83 to 76. I guess that's not too bad. 7%. 7% of what? What's my power? 7% of 253. So if you guys want to work out the math on that one, I'm sure somebody will put it down in the comments below for you guys. It's okay. I mean, that's not too bad. But for 15 points, what was it, 15? 18. So for 18 points of damage, it's really pathetic compared to what the melee guys are doing with just their weapon. Like, it doesn't take any of their power, and they're doing more damage than that. So, again, you don't really get the most powerful spells for a cleric as far as direct damage spells go. But it is kind of nice they threw in one every once in a while. And of course, I'm going to fizzle a lot here. Then you see people down here looking for enchanters with breeze or clarity. This is a pretty low zone. You probably won't run into a zone that has an enchanter with breeze or clarity until you get around 25-ish, around that level. You'll start on a common basis running into people that were just selling it or giving it away. Because not only is that around the level that the enchanters are going to get a decent clarity, but that's around the level that people will really start needing it just to basically get by in some of these zones that they may be too low for but have really good loot. So that's real. Like I said before, a lot of people will there we go, Adam Mana. A lot of people will actually play a character all the way to around level 20, and then right there at that level, that's when things start to get hard and you really find out whether that character is what you really want to progress yourself into, if you're going to stick with that character or not. So around level 25 is when people will be for sure. If you've gotten to that point, you're probably going to stick with that character. If you haven't gotten to that point, or you're having trouble getting past your 20s or whatever, and you start losing a little bit of interest in the character because he starts going in a different direction that you're not really liking all that much, that's why the people you'll find getting past level 20 to level 30 are going to be those guys you're going to see from then on. Like, you'll recognize names and you'll start seeing them in zones that you go to more often, and you'll become friends with these people, hopefully. I mean, not everybody's going to get along with everybody, but thankfully in games like this, even if you have somebody who's super annoying, it doesn't always come across unless you're talking to them. So you can be in a group with somebody who just can't stop talking, like myself right now, but that's because I'm doing the video. But you're going to be in a group with somebody like that, and never even know it because they're just not typing anything. They may be yelling at the screen at the football game and be like, oh, those crazy ones who get so wrapped up into it that you record them. You'll see them on YouTube. They just look completely nuts from afar, but you won't know that. So it's kind of cool in that regard. It's also nice that if you want to know these people, it's very easy to do so too. You can just send them a message. I've been on other MMOs that make the chat bars and chat abilities very clunky and very open, so that it's not easy to hold a conversation with somebody. Because you want to have things in the open so that people in a group can talk to one another. You also want to have another means of doing that in private, not because you're sitting there bad mouthing anybody, but because you don't want to clutter it with stuff that nobody else really wants to see. If I'm talking to somebody in group, and we start talking about a subject like the weather, or the fact that we both just got flat screen TVs, or something along those lines, and we find it interesting enough to carry that conversation on, but nobody else is really interested. In fact, they may go off to another subject and be like, they may be talking about football, and then it goes to ice cream and cars, and all these weird topics that it can just switch back and forth to. But your topic is, oh yeah, you got flat screen TVs, and you're having this problem, and he's having that problem, and you guys are trying to figure it out together. That's very nice to have that in like a private tell, so that you're not cluttering up and disturbing what's going on with them. But a lot of the MMOs, not a lot of them, but some of them that I've played, don't have that ability. Like, they have private messages, but they're kind of clunky. They don't work quite right. They're not easy to use. In this one, if you're having a message sent back and forth between one another, you can just hit the R button on the keyboard, which automatically pops up /tell and then their name. It stands for reply, basically. You're replying to the last person who sent you a message. In some games, you literally have to sit there and type out their entire name. And I hate to say it, but some people use a lot of letters in their name. The shorter the name is, the easier it is to type it out. But if you're one of these people who have a 20 or 30 letter name, which is just enormous to type out every single time you want to send them a message, it makes sending people a message a chore. Like, nobody wants to do that. Every single time I got to type their name out, and if I make one spelling mistake in their name, and then type out this huge long sentence, it's gone. It doesn't send it to them because nobody exists by that name, and then I have to type out the entire thing all over again. So this one is kind of user-friendly in that regard, that the chat is incredibly easy to use. It's very organized, and it's just very polished. I mean, everything works. Maybe that's because before this, it was all like text-based games that were the MMOs. I mean, they didn't really have a graphic interface like this for any MMO that I had ever played before this game came out. So maybe they had mastered, what you needed for text to play a game like this, and then they just superimposed that onto a game like this, graphics and everything all. But I don't know that for sure. I don't know if that's their mindset behind it, or if they were just really, really good programmers who understood the fact that an MMO should have a very good process of communicating with other people, other players, in a very straightforward and easy manner. I don't know if I have gotten into all the different ways you can communicate with people in this game. You got tells, you got replies, you have say, so you can just say to the people around you, and I believe it's like a 20-foot radius around you. People will hear your says. You have shout, which shows up in the entire zone as big red text that everybody can see. You have out of character, which is OOC, which will show up in green text, as you see down there on the screen right now. It's this light green text that most people will use, and it was kind of made so that people could ask questions in a way that didn't offend people who were doing the role playing. Because in the early days when this game came out, you had a lot of D&D fans playing this game because it was kind of like just made for them. I mean, it's obviously not Dungeons and Dragons storyline, but it's that kind of gameplay. And when you run into an issue, you want to be able to ask a question, but these people were role playing, and it was funny because you have people who were role playing like an ogre, and they would literally talk you know, in like broken English as an ogre. Like they were doing it on purpose. It's not that they didn't know English or that they weren't fluent in it. Let me help with this. Guess she got healing. I don't want to step on her toes. But yeah, they would get all into it with the role-playing aspect. They would also, like Dark Elves, wouldn't talk to races that weren't evil and things of that sort. Now, it wasn't like in Warcraft, you know, World of Warcraft, where for a while there, you couldn't even send an orc as a message if you were like a human, and vice versa. You just couldn't even send private tells, which I thought was a little bit going overboard on that whole role-playing aspect of it, but some people seem to like that, and I'm not sure if it's still like that now. I heard that they changed that, but if you guys play that game, you'll have to let me know if they actually did, or if that was just something temporary they tried and went back to the old way. But this gave people a way to step out of that role-playing aspect, the out-of-character channel, and instead of talking in broken English and stuff like that, they would just ask their question. And nobody else would get mad, and nobody would be like, oh, you're breaking character, man, and stuff like that. It's just, it was an acceptable way of doing it. I don't know why they came running at me. Let me see. Which one do I want to attack? This is the problem you have when you start actually using your attacks, is you need to figure out which one he's on. He's actually not attacking any of them. So I'll go ahead and attack it. Fizzling quite a bit today. I don't think I've ever fizzled this much. Go ahead and tell him I'm at 10%. Let's see, 80. Okay, so it jumped down to 15%. I think it's almost dead. That one's at 35%. As you can see, I'm still getting faction hits for the Emerald Warrior, the Fadar Champions, the Storm Guard, are still getting better. And for those of you who watch my videos, will know that I've actually been here for quite some time now, and my faction still hasn't been maxed out. Just to give you an idea how faction works in this game, it is incredibly hard to gain faction, a positive faction, I should say, but incredibly easy to gain negative faction. So, in other words, I may kill a creature that gives me positive faction, and he only gives me, say, 2. And you need like 1,000 to get anywhere, to get up even just to the next level on your faction skill area, for that faction of that creature to be anything other than hateful or indifferent or things of that sort. You may only get 2 per kill, but whereas when you kill something that you're not supposed to, or stuff that they don't want you to kill, I should say, because you can kill anything in this game, even guards, and it's perfectly fine. That's what they made them there for, and that's why guards are different levels in this game, rather than constantly always being maxed out level, and just like super buffed out and super geared out like they are in some of the other games, because they're not made to be killed. In this one, they kind of are, or at least possible to kill these guys. Instead of doing that, hold on a second, add a mana again, pull at your own health. It should be pull at your own risk, but instead of getting a small amount of faction for killing the creature they don't want you to kill, you lose a lot. Instead of losing like 2, you may lose like 500 per kill faction just from killing one creature. It's crazy how fast it drops. Now I'm just using those numbers out of the air because none of those are right, but they are pretty close to accurate, as in the fact that you gain so much less than what you will lose if you go down the wrong path, which is why I've said before many times that if you're not sure about a faction, you kill a creature and it has a faction hit, because a lot of creatures don't have any faction hit. and those creatures are perfectly fine. You won't have to run into any problems whatsoever. But if you kill something and you notice it has a faction hit, and you're not quite sure what that faction is for, because you'll get an idea of what different factions are as you play the game, you'll realize that, oh, this faction for the Fate or whatever goes to these guys, and this faction goes to these guys, and all that kind of stuff that you'll learn over time. But if you're not sure who that faction is, and if you're not sure if you're going to need that faction later on, my suggestion to you would be just to leave those guys alone. Don't kill those creatures. There's plenty of other things in the game that you can kill without having to worry about faction. Like Corner's Castle, you can go in there and just kill, and there's no faction hits as far as I remember in that zone. Seb, same thing. You just go in there and kill, no faction hits. So it's kind of cool, you know, that you don't have to worry about that aspect, and yet in some zones they do have those faction hits. So it kind of throws in a whole nother aspect to the game that you can delve into when you actually start understanding a lot more about it. And it makes you feel like you're finally becoming part of the world that you're in. You're kind of understanding a lot of the rules, the way they interact with each other, and it really opens up this whole nother world to you, because as you start changing your factions, you know, certain things will become available to you that weren't always available to you. And I'm not going to be like Quest, because Everquest is not really about quest. There's very few quests you can do in this game, and then there's very few quests that are actually worth it for you to do, I should say as well, because some of the lower level ones are nice, you know, to give you a little boost for experience, but you don't get really any good items out of them. I mean, you know, they're okay, and if you're not a tweak, you can use them and be happy about it, like I do with the Kaladin Crushbone Belt quest, which I've done videos on for those of you who are not familiar with that. These Crushbone orcs over here will drop belts, and they'll drop shoulder pads called Crushbone shoulder pads or Crushbone belts, or Legionnaire shoulder pads, I think is what they're called. You'd turn in 2 pads or 1 belt, and they give you experience and loot in return. In fact, I think I'm still wearing quite a bit of the armor that they give you. Yeah, so it's this patchwork. Yeah, tattered. Yeah, I think this is the tattered stuff. Patchwork as well. And it's not the greatest stuff in the world, like I said before, but it's pretty nice. It's probably going to be better than anything you're going to be able to get at this level off of creatures, unless you just happen to be camping up really good named. But there's not a huge amount of names at this low level, and they do that on purpose because, for one, you're going to be leveling a lot quicker at this level than you will at any of the other levels. So they're not in a hurry to give you just really great stuff, because they know that you're going to bypass the level that it becomes really worth it to have at a certain point. Now, there's no level restriction on this game. If you get an item that's really high level, or from a really high level creature, I should say, because there's no level limit or requirement on the majority of the items. I think that's something they added towards the end of the game, or some of the later expansions. They went back and retroactive put in some of the gear, but I don't think it's in this version of the game. So you can use stuff that drops off a level 50 creature at level 1. But like I said before, that it kind of nerfs you. I think it's below 20. If you have, say, 200 wisdom, which is the cap, I think later on they upped it to like 210. But for every wisdom you have, you gain an extra 10 power. And then anything past whatever the cap is, which I believe is 200, you only gain 1 power for every wisdom. You know, if you're a wisdom-based character. If your intelligence is the same thing, you get 10 for every intelligence, or 1 past the 200 mark. So at that point, a lot of people will start replacing some of their equipment and going with power, just pure mana, because there will be rings and jewelry, things of that sort, that instead of adding wisdom, they add, 65 power. Well, that's basically 6.5 wisdom, unless you're already capped out, and then that's a good way to get an extra 6.5 wisdom without hitting that wisdom cap that's only going to give you basically 6.5 power. You're getting 65 instead of just 6.5. So That's a little trick that people will use. But below level 20, I believe there's another little cap that even if you had that maxed out 200, you're not having the mana pool that you would normally have, because they realize that you shouldn't be anywhere close to that this early on. And so this is their way of kind of tweaking your character, because you're still going to notice a huge increase. You're still going to notice that your power is probably 3 or 4 times the amount that it would be for a person who had just a normal set of armor at that level. Let me go here and attack this real quick. Let me do one more. I can't stop fizzling. See, I can't see my target. There's quite a few of them over here. Legionnaire, Centurion. I think he's gonna do this one just fine. I don't think it's that tough. It's dark blue. Now, the one thing that I would suggest you get accustomed to using that attacks for a cleric is your stun spells. They are incredibly useful at higher levels. A lot of the creatures you'll begin to notice at higher levels start to cast spells, whether they are, you know, enchanter spells that actually charm your own group to attack other members in your group. And that sucks when that happens, because usually the person who gets charmed is the one who has the aggro. That would be your tank. And it just kind of sucks to have your tank beat on your cleric or your enchanter. Now, the cool thing with my case, which, you know, sucked most of the time, but was kind of nice when I got charmed, is that as a Shadow Knight, as I said before, they were kind of the overlooked character, the one that you know, the programmers really didn't pay that much attention to. So there was a lot of things about that character people were kind of upset about that they eventually fixed or changed or enhanced in some way. But at the time I was playing them, Shadow Knights didn't do that much damage with their melee weapon. And when they charm you, you're not using your spells. They're not taking control of that aspect. They are taking control of just your body. They can move you around, make you chase things, make you run out of the room. You know, basically do anything that you can do with your keyboard as far as movement, and then with your melee weapon. So in my situation, when I would get charmed as a Shadow Knight, which only happened rarely because I had a pretty big or pretty good magic resist on my armor, when it happened, I would turn and start hitting people, and it really wouldn't do that much damage to them. It just, you know, they were still casters, so they were still taking some damage, but overall, not anywhere close to what somebody like a rogue or a who else would do a lot of damage? A monk. You know, if a monk got charmed and he started beating on with just his melee weapon, you know, anybody in your group, they're going to get hit pretty bad. And the charm could last quite a bit of time. I mean, it may last 30 seconds, 40 seconds. I think you were still able to type, though, when it happened. So you could let your group know that you're charmed, and I think there was something they could cast on to cure it, or dispel it, or something along those lines. It usually didn't last too long in my case, so I don't think anybody ever used anything on me when it happened, but I think there is something you can use on them. Beyond that, they will still use all the other spells you have. They use direct damage spells, the creatures. They'll also use heal spells. So if you can keep an eye on, because as a cleric you can see you're just kind of sitting here, or as a healer you're just kind of sitting in the back, you can keep an eye on the mob, and you can actually see he'll do the same thing you do, where the little specks of particle glowing orbs start flowing out of their hands, and you can hear that they're casting a spell, and they have the same amount of casting time that you would normally have for a spell equal to that kind of damage and that kind of spell. Granted, their spells are not exactly like yours. They're not called the same name as yours. They're not doing the same amount of damage. They're not, you know, having the same effects. Theirs are a completely different set of spells that are, you know, just for those set of creatures. But you'll be able to tell that they're casting, and then you'll be able to use your stun spells. And the great thing about those is that clerics, I believe, will get around 3. It may be 4, but I'm thinking it's just 3 stun spells. One of them is just a pure stun. That's all it does is stun. There's another one that actually does stun and damage. And I believe there's the third one is somewhere in the middle. It does a stun and something else maybe. The pure stun one comes back really quickly. You can cast that one over and over and over again. I think it's like a 3 or 3.5 second recast time, which is pretty quick for a spell. But the one that does damage has a greater chance of stunning, but it takes longer to cast. It has a longer recast time, and it uses more power, obviously, because it's doing more. Let them know I'm only at 10%. But with the total of all your stun spells, I remember that if you spaced it out enough, because even once you interrupt a creature, he has to cast again, and some of his casting time ones take quite a long time, maybe 3, 4, 5 seconds to cast. So you could wait, you could wait until just the very right moment, hit him again with his stun. It would take him a couple of seconds to recover from his stun, and then another 3, 4, 5 seconds to cast his spell again. And within that 7 to 8 second time frame, most of your stuns would come back, especially if you're using 3 of them. And so you could constantly just chain stun a caster and just let everybody else beat them down. And usually on casters, people would go all out, and wizards wouldn't really watch their aggro too much because, again, casters will cast spells before they do their melee. And so if you stun them, they're not going to just run over to the wizard and start beating on him. They're going to turn their attention towards the wizard because now he's stolen aggro, and then they're going to be able to begin casting their spells, which then you can interrupt. So it doesn't really matter who has aggro in that fight because nobody will ever get hit if your stuns go off in the right order. And you're not the only class who gets stuns. So if everybody's kind of on the ball on that, especially like the paladins and things of that sort, or I believe the warriors. No, the warriors always used those 2 lightsaber weapons for their epics, but if you have a shield, you can use bash, which also will have a chance at stunning or interrupting their spells. So with all those things in combination, you could go through a wizard who would normally just wipe the floor with a group who wasn't using stuns to the point where they're so easy. Those are the ones you prefer. Those are the ones you want to get because no damage is ever done, and they have very little hit points. It's all about how you come at the fight. If you know what that creature is, you know how to... Let me tell this guy congrats. Which I guess is why he's not moving. He's probably got new spells or something along those lines. But yeah, everything is just how you come at it. I mean, there are some zones that people utterly hate and despise, like Carnor's Castle. Some people just cannot stand that zone because of all the trains that happen. But other people realize and understand the mechanics of that zone and have no problem with the trains. They realize that it's something that's going to happen. This is how you avoid it. This is how you pull on that zone. We can use the trains to our own advantage by taking advantage of like fatigue death and just waiting until people pull names to the entrance. Because when somebody runs through the zone, they're just running through the zone and picking up everything they pass by. And a lot of the times, the names will be some of the very last creatures. I probably shouldn't sit here because it's the first thing I see. But a lot of the times, the names will get stuck on something or sit there a little bit longer than their protectors, the other mobs who happen to be in the same room. And so when there's a big train, some of the time, people who are fatigued death at the entrance can pop up real quick, snag that named without pulling any of the other ones, and then fight it. Like a necro can take on creatures by himself if he's the right level. You also have groups that kind of do the same thing, is that they're way off to the side of one of the little safe spots of the entrance area, and they let their tank pull off some of these ads or some of these creatures who have been pulled to the zone entrance. These creatures may have been pulled from halfway through the zone and from rooms that you aren't anywhere even close to getting to, but you're taking advantage of of these nice pulls, these extra names that pop up every so often when somebody's running out because their group, quit on them and gated out or something weird like that, So you have to understand every zone has its quirks, and then try to tailor your experience to take advantage of that stuff. I mean, you're not cheating. You're just realizing that this is the way, the game works, and, there's no reason why I shouldn't, profit or get more experience or find a enjoyable way to coexist with, the bad stuff that happens in this zone. Like, trains can be horrible. I mean, trains can just wipe an entire group that just, you may be kicking butt in one spot. You may just be, taking all these guys down so easy. People are at full power and they're joking around that nothing can stop them. And then a train comes through and just wipes you in just seconds, right? And it's just, you were doing so good. How can anything even come close to messing with that? And great. Every time I move someplace, this guy seems to want to pull from it. I think he has it out for me. Let me zoom in so you guys don't have a picture of my face or the back of my head. I'm saving my power because it seems like she's really, really low. And I don't know if Tio even knows that I'm a cleric. He invited me, and I shouted as I was a level 9 cleric. So he should know, but... In fact, I'll show you. I'm probably pretty close to leveling, yeah. About a half a bubble. Yeah, a little bit more than half a bubble. Because I'm only about 2 1/3 of 5 bubbles, so... Maybe another half an hour and I'll probably level. So for those of you who are wondering why I haven't been playing my other characters, the Necro and the Paladin, I actually have been playing them here and there. I have 3 characters that I'm kind of switching back and forth between, and the character that I play to do these videos is mainly the one that I could find a group in. Now, I've been over in the Common Lands with my Necro. The group over there is almost always up, and every single time I've logged on lately to get a group over there, there's a waiting list of at least 4 people waiting to get into that group. I'm trying to do all my leveling of that level of that zone in that spot, because that's the place that most of you guys are going to go to, and I want to show you guys the common places. Now, with my Paladin, I'm actually thinking about heading over to what is it? Is it Butcher Block? Yeah, I think it's Butcher Block that I want to head over to, and maybe go to the chess set and things of that sort, and try to do a little bit of soloing, because I haven't really shown you how to and do really that much stuff by yourself, or go to some of these zones that really nobody really goes to that often, because it's not really good experience. It's not constant experience, I should say. It's experience just like anything else, but you're not earning it as quickly, as often, and as safely as you do, over here in a group. Because some zones actually have an experience bonus that they give you, whereas, I don't think they have one in Butcher Block. So I'm gonna play those guys. I'm gonna take them over there. It's just, what zones have people that I can group with, and how much time I have, because some days I log on and I have 20-30 minutes to play. In those days, if I can find a group right away, that's what I'll do. In those days where I can't, I may log on to a different character and do some soloing with that, which is originally why I made the Necro, so I could go to a lot of these different zones that I normally didn't get to go to, because Necros solo really well. They also have Invis and Fatigue Depth, so I'll really be able to get into some places that are incredibly dangerous and show you guys, not just around the zone, but I'll show you like what the creatures drop, and if there's any names and what the timelines on those names are and things of that sort. So if you're interested in that or looking forward to that, go ahead and post down in the comments. I'll be happy to hit those up, sooner than I was thinking, but they are coming regardless if you guys want to see that. So we're probably going to end the episode here, guys. If you like these episodes, I appreciate you hitting the like button and subscribing. There's a lot of games that I want to do Let's Plays for and reviews, but a lot of these companies, or I shouldn't say a lot of them, but some of these companies won't even give you permission to do that unless you meet a certain requirement, a certain subscriber number and things of that sort. For me, the number really doesn't mean anything more than there's people out there who enjoy watching the videos that I spend effort into making. So it is a nice little boost to your ego every time you get one. It's kind of like, oh, okay, somebody else is appreciating the hard work that I put into it. Other than that, I mean, just having that number doesn't, do anything else other than allow me to review more video games in the future, hopefully. And then maybe even one day have them ship me out video games that are coming before they even show up. So maybe I can give you guys some sneak peeks. But again, if you guys like the video, hit the little like button every once in a while. Definitely appreciate that. And I'll definitely catch you on the next video.